Hey everyone, today I'm going to be talking about 20 cards I think you need to know extremely well as we move into this format as a Malice player. Not just what these cards do, but how they interact with your deck and the meta around you, and if not, you should be considering these for your lists. So first things first, I want to talk about Book of Eclipse, which some of these cards are not really specific to Malice, but the whole game plan is just to focus on Malice. So Book of Eclipse is a really strong card. Looking at what decks are relevant, the only deck this doesn't really feel particularly good against is Malice when you go second into them because they end with a bunch of links. But when when you start first against them, they summon something, you flip it over, and it's very annoying for them. And then when you look at Ryzel, it goes from being annoying to outright a game ender sometimes. If they don't have a way to chain their designator to then negate it, or they don't have Ash, you might actually just win off of this card alone. This card is extremely crazy into the decks that it actually works against, which is pretty much just not link climbing decks. And then on the flip side of that same coin, because I feel like these cards are, part of the same coin, we have Droplet. Now, Droplet is a little bit different than Eclipse because I don't think there is a deck that this feels bad going into. Right? You're looking at Malice, you can hit that Ransom, you can hit that Binder, you can hit that White Rabbit, you can hit that SP. That's a lot of valuable targets. Ryzel, I mean, again, you have other cards here that you can be hitting. You have that Detonator, and there are some very high quality rank 4s in their extra deck that they may decide to end on that are worth hitting to. So there you go. That's kind of how like these two cards hit the meta. Now we have Artifact Sanctum. Now, this is literally just for Lancia. Usually what you would see is they do thrust into this, and then they set it, and then they would just flip and get this, and then use the effect. Now, this does have to special summon the Lancia, meaning that if you were to run Impulse, you could be like, nope, and you deny the Lancia for the turn, right? Assuming they didn't draw into it. So that's important to know. And speaking of like Lancia, all you really need to know for Malice is this will effectively stop you from playing the game. It's the equivalent of Dimensional Barrier, which is not on this list, but that is also a very important card because Artifact Lancia shuts down Malice, Barrier shuts down Ryzel, to the point that both decks have had to look at additional engines to run. So for Malice, it is going to be Sky Striker. Yes, there is Cash. Yes, there is Pure. I think there's something, Fiendsmith too, but Striker is the most popular, and I think it may be the most successful. Don't quote me on that. You have cards like Engage, which you're running typically at 3, and once you get 3 or more spells in a grave, then you can draw a card, so that's going to be really great. In addition, this is going to be searching these cards. Now, these two are the main ones to look at, but there's a lot of people, myself included, who are looking at Shark Cannon, but let's get on drones, which is the absolute biggest reason you should be running Striker right now. You use drones, use Link 1, use drones again, you have 2 bodies on field, normal summon any Malice name. Now you can get into your links. Typically, you're going to see someone end on either Cryptor plus MTP, that's 2 non-target banishes, or something like Binder with GWC or Cryptor with GWC, and then you would set MTP on the opponent's turn by getting the White Rabbit, right? So something like that can kind of help you survive the turn, because once they Lancia you, it's just about surviving the turn and trying to play with whatever is left. This is basically a searchable Imperm. The only difference is once you get 3 spells in the grave on top of the negate, then you could then take that card, and you can even use it to beat over other cards. So you can kind of like wall break with this, or board break, sorry. This card is similar, but not quite the same, and its applications are a little bit more niche. You can banish one from the graveyard, and then if you have 3 more spells, you can then special summon it to your side of the field. It cannot attack though. The difference between this and Bystals, because I would be using them both in tandem and I would not cut down my Bystals, is just the fact that it doesn't matter if it's a light or dark, meaning that this is a card that is going to definitely have some applications in general, like regardless if it's Malice or Ryzel, but it can be hitting some of those rogue decks, like for example, if there's like that Mermill player at your locals or at the next Weiss or the regionals or something like that, right? So obviously this is definitely a card that I think is good, but I don't think it's on enough people's radars. Then obviously we have Imperm. Imperm is great, it's strong, it's good into everything. If you see a Malice name hit the field and there's no trap set, you hit them with this, there's a good chance their turn may be over, as they now have to extend past this play with a field spell or like a gold sarcophagus, a lore. They do have some options, but you're forcing them to extend early, meaning they're not going to have that later. And then, of course, you can just hit Detonator with it, and that feels good. There is some counterplay, like Star Leech will stop you from targeting, so I mean, that's where kind of like these kind of cards might come in handy. But yeah, mainly this one. GWC, this is pretty much like how you would like get a bunch of stuff in the grave, and then you would do like a White Binder or White Rabbit or some other link, and then you just spin them out and you just start destroying the enemy's board. You just start destroying the enemy's board. It just goes crazy. It's important to know that in the mirror, this card can get packed by this. Like, if you have this set, but they happen to have this in your hand, there's a pretty good chance this is not going to resolve. So we'll go ahead and talk about that now, and that like people will do terahertz, set this, and then they'll send this guy. This guy, for those of you who don't know, if you have a link 4 or higher, that's generally going to be terahertz, and they have to be a Cyberse, of course. You can quick effect banish this guy, so long as they're using a spell or trap or effect, and then you can negate it. So if they had only this, you would stop the impulse from stopping this. But typically Malice lists are going to have 3 to 5 Bystools and sometimes even a Shark Cannon on top, meaning that it is actually not that reliable to think that this alone will protect your GWC from resolving. So that is something to really keep in mind as we move forward. Something else to think about is with Purge and Impulse, because I didn't really talk about this, these cards have a secondary effect of if there is a trap in the graveyard, as I use this to negate something, I will also then destroy it. So that's really important to know. Pulse, what Purge does is it stops you from doing that search. So like you're like trying to add a card from your deck to your hand, it's like no. So that's relevant for Malice because of Ransom, and that's relevant for Ryzeal because of Duo Drive. And if you lose the body there, that can actually be very detrimental. I think maybe a little bit more for Malice, but it still matters when you lose your Duo Drive and the 2 materials. So that can be very obnoxious for both decks. And something to keep in mind is with these having that secondary effect of destroying if there's something in the grave, that makes Shifter even a little bit more of a card to always keep in mind, because you're not going to be able to imperm and then, you know, impulse or purge and then kill my monsters and stuff. You can negate, but you won't get the body. So long as I shotgun this, you won't get that body. So that's really important to know. And also there's a bunch of other hand traps like Veiler, Ghost Ogre, Droll. If this is active, you can't use them. Feels very good. Fua is just here because you need to understand what your lines are and what your combos are, and these obviously do change some into Shifter. If you have Shifter live and they Fua you 4 draws, you can get Cryptor SP. Now that depends on what your hand is and all that. Like maybe you don't want to do that because you have no back row, but that's possible. And for those of you wondering what you do, you just mouse, get Rabbit, set TB11, and then from there you need to make Link a Rebo. Then you climb into Cryptor, and then you just get SP. So that's 4. I said 3 extra deck names, but the TB11 summons from the special summons from the extra deck, so that's 4. That's under Shifter, and that's I think it's like 1 or 2 draws shorter than if you didn't do it under Shifter. So yeah. Also, something to keep in mind with Shifter is it's still the best hand trap. Like, it's still the best standalone hand trap into the format, because even into Ryzeal, the one deck that people think it doesn't matter, a lot of times they just do Detonator Pass, because a lot of these cards mention the graveyard in some capacity. With the exception of Ryzeal plugin mentioning the graveyard and the banish, you have this, which is going to shuffle 2 back from the grave. You can't do that. This, which wants to special summon if you have one in the grave, can't do that. This wants to discard 1 to the grave, or it can't do that. This wants to do something with the grave for special summon, can't do that. So a lot of these cards do not get to special summon. Like, obviously you can special summon if there's something on the field, but yeah. Also, it's really important to think about Ryzeal X, because he cannot set that aggregator and then break your board open, right? So a lot of times you're going to see Detonator Pass. That's it. Obviously, that's not the easiest board to break with just pure engine, but that's why I'm talking about these cards right here, because this is not just pure engine. I have Fiendsmith Requiem here just to represent Fiendsmith, and generally speaking, I want to kill this card. When I have Bystools in hand or Shark Cannon, this is the target. It's just the target, because a lot of times what they're going to do, especially if they don't open up with Fiendsmith, is they're going to do something like Accept on Night, then Requiem, Accept on Night, yeah, I think it's Accept on Night into Closed Moon into Requiem or something like that. Or maybe Accept on Night into Requiem, I don't remember. But basically, the second this thing goes in the graveyard, if they don't start Fiendsmith, you should just buy soul this out. And that forces them to essentially just end on a Chaos Angel that's just light. That's a lot easier to deal with than the Desiree, who's going to like negate 2. I have this guy mentioned just because I feel like he's a little bit of a noob trap. You watch any YouTuber or you look at spreadsheets, and a lot of times they're going to say like this guy is just straight him energy, like he's just a boss monster, and I think he's just not, because it's like Rengeki response, he's dead. It doesn't matter. And just looking at the GWC, he's not like the best in terms of protecting it either with this one send. On top of that, I just think the Crypto SP is just way better than this guy. It's just better. It's harder to out. It's 2 banishes. One of them is not even targeting either. And of course, one of those monsters can then bounce back even if you do kill it. So yeah, definitely not, like, he's okay. He's not bad, but he's not amazing either. Linkuriboh is a card I feel like doesn't get enough praise. Into the Mirror, this is great because you can't resolve any of your traps, specifically like your TB11 or your GWC. Like, they're going to have to Imperm, they're going to have to Widow Anchor, they're going to have to Droplet, right? So you're forcing out some of those cards way earlier than they would like to, just to play. That's before we talk about what's in your back row, your Cryptor, or your SP, which this, with Cryptor plus SP, is so hard to actually play into, especially if you're playing pure Malice. If you're playing Striker, I think it's a bit easier, but yeah, this is hard. She's just here because, again, drones, link 1, drones again, normal summon, done, right? And then Detonator, he's just the guy to beat. Like, a lot of people need to know how to beat him, or you just lose to this card alone popping 3 dudes. And sometimes they even put more than 3 pops on them, so yeah. And, I mean, you know, looking at this, potentially this, and obviously this, these are great answers to Detonator. So, yeah, that's 20 cards I think would be super helpful for you to know as a Malice player looking at the format. And, you know, even if you don't play Malice, some of these things should be pretty useful to you. So if you found this video helpful, or maybe not so much, let me know down below. I'd love to talk to you.